Good evening, everybody. Welcome, bienvenue. Welcome to this incredible dialogue that we're about to have about policymaking in a time of COVID, policymaking in a very complex context with amazing youth and parliamentary leaders from across Canada and Germany. This is about to be an incredible hour, very engaging. And to kick us all off, I'd like to remind everyone that you can use the chat function in Zoom to ask questions at any time to anybody who you see on the screen so that we can bring in a very robust dialogue for this global conversation. My name is Victoria Lennox, and I am the co-founder of Startup Canada, a serial entrepreneur. I've started businesses in Europe as well as in Canada, and I'm very active as a lobbyist as well. Policymaking in this context has never been more challenging, at least for this generation. And we know that young people have a lot of ideas about how we can do things differently. So I'm very excited today to hear from the youth about their policy ideas and to discuss with parliamentary leaders from across Canada and Germany and Europe about what we can do as we work together to create more inclusive digital policies that bring everyone together and create peace, harmony, hope, prosperity, and just resilience for the world. So thank you so much, everybody. I'd like to start the discussion. And again, definitely start asking questions right away. I'd love to start the discussion by opening it up to Robin Arens, who's leading this global initiative to tell us about the organization and why we're here today.
Yeah, thank you, Victoria. My name is Robin, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Young Transatlantic Leadership Initiative, YTL. We are a German project now within the German-Canadian Association, which fosters the exchange of German and Canadian young professionals. So we are doing this in doing study tours to Canada and Europe, if traveling is allowed again. We are doing the YTL Leaders Lounge every last Thursday in the month to talk to one German or Canadian leader about their life experience, about what they've learned in Transatlantic Exchange. So the next one is actually with Victoria in the end of November. And we're really excited to have her here today and in 4 weeks with us. And yeah, that's what we're mainly doing. We've started in 2018, so we are quite young, but we are working since then with the Goethe-Institut in Montreal. So we are glad to partner here with you, welcome you and host you today. And I'm looking forward to this great exchange and hopefully many more to come.
Well, that's awesome. And congratulations for this initiative. Congratulations for how much you've achieved in just 2 years. It's an incredible effort, and truly thank you for your leadership. As we know, we live in a global digital environment, and that connectivity between our young people, not just looking at home in our own backyards, but understanding different cultures and working together and doing business together, creating policies together. That's how we can really create the global governance frameworks that we need for the future. So very, very good. I'll now pass it over to Antoine to tell us a bit about the program, this intense program of the coming together with European and Canadian youth and what has transpired. So over to you, Antoine.
Thank you, Victoria, and good morning, good afternoon to everyone. I will just really take a minute to thank everyone, the participants and the audience on behalf of the 3 project partners, so the Goethe-Institut in Montreal, along with Think Young in Europe and the Carrefour Jeunesse Emploi Notre-Dame-de-Grâce in Montreal as well. The 3 partners have been implementing this youth and digital inclusion project for a little more than a year now. So we've gathered together dozens of young adults from Canada, from Europe, offline, online, for a series of discussions, policy recommendations. So I'm super glad that we can get the chance to have a kind of a sample view of what this project was about in the conversation today. So I'll leave it to you, Victoria, to run the remainder of the show, but thank you again, everyone, for being here.
Oh, absolutely. And again, congratulations on this great initiative, and thanks to the Institute for partnering with YTL. How cool is that to have that anchor in Montreal for Canada? That's awesome. And now I'm really delighted to see here Greg Fergus, Member of Parliament, Finance Committee, like just driving it here in Canada, just killing it. So he's joining us today to provide some opening remarks. Unfortunately, Mr. Fergus cannot stay for the discussion later on today. However, if you have any questions for him, his colleague Cid will be joining us later in the program. But Mr. Fergus, it's so nice to see you.
Oh, please just call me Greg, Victoria, and it's really great to be here with you, Antoine. Guten Abend to all my friends with the Goethe-Institut, especially our friends from Germany who are joining us here. I'm just I apologize for A, arriving late, and B, leaving early. But when we had agreed to this time frame, my schedule was wide open and cleared. And then on the front end, we had a committee meeting, which is still not over, but I found a replacement to take over my spot. And then on the back end, we had a vote that was just scheduled, which will take place at 12:30. So my time is limited, but I'm grateful that Cid Cabilan is here and more than able and frankly literally more than able to handle the discussions that are going to be happening along here. Alors, je sais pas, habituellement, je fais des adresses dans les deux langues, anglais, français, mais je vois que, est-ce que c'est l'anglais qui est la langue commune? Parce que moi, malheureusement, einsprechen die Deutsch, keiner. So it's not very, very good. I know I should go to the institute here in Ottawa to learn more German, but my relationship with Germany is long and has been it's been very, very long, and it's unfortunate that I haven't picked up the language yet, although two of my children speak it fluently. So I'm glad to join you here. It's also especially glad to join you on behalf of Minister Joyce Murray, who is Minister for Digital Government, who unfortunately can't attend today as well, but wanted to be part of this process. When the minister laid out her vision for what is digital government, I think she could lay it down in one big rubric, and that is putting people first. That is about designing and delivering an inclusive and accessible services to Canadians, to get those services from their government. And I'll talk a little bit about that putting people first framework. But also, it's really important that we talk about inclusivity. How do we design for the edges of what we do, for the people who find themselves on the edge of the technological revolution that's had, or the digital literacy that is had? How do we make services almost seamless and useful to them? Then we need to talk about some standards. And when you put the standards in together and you talk about designing for the edges or inclusivity, I think then you understand what I mean by putting people first. So if I could just start right off the top, in Canada, and Antoine would know this, for many people, the federal government services are complex and really hard to access. There are long lineups. We still require people to use faxes in some cases. Mail-in applications, of course, are available. And these are really processes of the past. Folks often have to set aside a considerable amount of time for their transactions with government, which is, like applying for a passport or applying for employment insurance during regular times. We've changed that now with the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, and that's a perfect example. And I know Cid will get into that. This needs to change. A successful digital transformation will transform how we approach service design and delivery. And instead of services that reflect cumbersome government-centered processes, we will design digital tools and solutions that are people-centered, that are secure, that are reliable and easy to use, and will be useful for the client, not for the government processes that appear behind the wall. So let's talk about putting people first. So oftentimes when we think about the shift to digital government, we often just talk about, taking our paper processes or taking our old processes and just replicating them online. But it has to be more than that if it's really going to be useful. We need to directly engage people. How do they use this information? What do they expect to have of it? What role do these devices and what role that people can have when they use a whole bunch of other services outside of government? How do we bring that inside to government? Really, in other words, what do we really need to have in terms of that information, and how we can make sure that Canadians have that opportunity to access those things? So that's why we are transforming the way that we deliver our services. And when we have a very small but powerful group called the Canadian Digital Services Service within our department, which is really a crackerjack group of people, women and men from all around the world who have joined in small, almost tiger team format to really transform the way that we deliver big services. I talked about inclusivity, and you have to forgive me, I'm looking at the clock at the same time, so I'm sort of ratcheting down my comments. But when we take a look at inclusivity, that's where we talk about not only designing services that are secure, reliable, and easy to use, but we must make sure that they are really for everybody, regardless of age and income or education. And as I said at the front end, the digital literacy. We need to be designing what we call designing for the edges. And this concept expands on the idea of a people-centered approach to service design. So we need to look at vulnerable populations and take a look at their barriers to accessibility from the outset when we're designing our programs. And we're trying to make our programs more flexible, more adaptive, and frankly, services for all users. A good example that the minister is fond of using is a low-tech example. She says of the wheelchair ramp. While originally implemented for people who use wheelchairs, ramps are also used and appreciated by people who push strollers, parents who push strollers, those with mobility issues, and children who have difficulty with large steps. So it goes well beyond what the original conception was. And frankly, that is the approach that we should be taking into at the outset of our design. If I were to then talk about digital standards, then it's really an important culture shift which we have to have here, where we have to stop taking a look at things just from a purely engineering or administrative perspective, and we need to really think of what the user, the person who is using this information, that should be at the center of our design. When we're establishing digital standards, we have to make sure that that becomes a standard across all government services, all government programs. We need to always take a look at what are the user needs and what are the accessibility options which are available at the outset of any design of any program that we're trying to come up with. And if we do that, I think then we will transform the way we offer services and offer them in a way that is truly useful for Canadians. So Victoria, Antoine, and my friends from the Goethe-Institut, I wish I could talk more with you today, but I'm looking at the clock on the vote, and I know I have a few minutes to get into my virtual seat to vote in the House of Commons. And it's a funny thing, but part of the reason why I have to leave early enough is just to make sure that my connection is secure, I can get on. It gets back to this whole process of making sure that we have an inclusive, we have a digital standard approach. And as you know, in Canada, I'm speaking to you right now, not from my home where I have a powerful Wi-Fi, but I'm speaking from my in-laws' home, which is 5 hours away from where I normally am. Due to a family illness that required us to leave suddenly. And it's a big thing. I got to make sure that I get on early to assume my seat in the House of that my vote will count. So that goes right back to the whole infrastructure design approach and inclusive approach that we were just talking about. So with that, I'll let you go, and I'm going to let Cid, it's great I get to make the comments and Cid gets to do the hard work of answering your questions. So thank you very much for that, and good luck. And we'll see each other another time. Sorry for leaving so soon.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Mr. Fergus. Thank you, Greg, and best wishes with your vote. Thank you for your contributions, early contributions to our discussion. Have a good one. All right. Very good, everybody. So I think that provided a lot of context about what we're looking at today, and designing programming, designing policies, digitizing government, digitizing policy making, leveraging data to create better policies, thinking about the long-term implications of our policy decisions and unintended consequences and pathways as digital transformation progresses at an accelerated rate. It's a very complex time to create policy. So what a great way to kick us all off in understanding some of the work that the Government of Canada is doing as it relates to digital transformation, service delivery to citizens, and so on. But it just starts there, doesn't it? It just starts there. So let's pass it to our youth now, who just went through a vigorous process to generate policy recommendations in a digital era to make a better life for everybody. So let's start with our first youth speaker, Enessa. Enessa is coming to us from Edmonton. And Enessa, can you just share with us what happened? Like, what was your experience through the program? What's the process you went through? And what were some of your early perceptions?
First of all, it's a pleasure to be here and to represent the entire team from the in-person Thinkathon, which took place over 24 hours here in Edmonton, and also with Milan simultaneously online. And I'm here to represent all the ideas we came up with and to speak to our experience. Je suis extrêmement ravie de me présenter ici devant vous et aussi de présenter les idées de mes camarades du Thinkathon. So what was especially valuable during this entire process was coming up with ideas through some activities from one of the mentors that we had. And this mentor is also part of our panelists right now. And through these activities, it allows us to engage in discussion and come up with barriers to digital inclusivity. These barriers that we have, they can be broad, and then they can also be very specific. The participation that we have in the real world is exactly the same online, especially with COVID now. So we're having to consider more and more as we progress with technology, what our participation looks like, and to consider what these barriers are. And today, for me, for example, just showing up is extremely valuable. I had to restart my computer 2-3 times. I think it's time for me to maybe get an updated computer. And then moving forward, just like our last panelist mentioned, having proper internet, access to internet. So we can start small and realize the obvious barriers to inclusion in order to start branching out and realize the other areas that are affecting us, such as in the current Thinkathon that we have now, some of which include racism and other really big topics. So just an example from our Thinkathon, I know we're limited for time and we'll continue to speak and talk later on. Some of the main problems we identified after coming up with examples, we were able to come up with 5 key categories, of which one was mental health, content filter, privacy, security, and digital isolation, which can seem pretty big. But when you start looking at the individual examples, you start to realize how relevant it is in our day-to-day life.
That's very good. Thanks for painting a picture for us and then identifying some of the initial concepts around accessibility that you identified. And very relevant right now is that disinformation or misinformation and policy implications of that, especially on democracies, you know. Very good. So that's the Canadian side of things. Let's fly over to Europe. Okay, so Marta's joining us from Milan. Marta, same thing. Like, can you tell us a bit about your experience on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, and you know what you came up with, and if some of the challenges you identified are the same as we were experiencing here in Canada?
Hi, Victoria. Thanks. And first of all, I would like to thank all the staff that made all the Thinkathon happen and possible for this great opportunity. I think that all the initiative was very interesting and international. Personally, I've never been overseas, so it has been a unique opportunity to speak and collect ideas also with people that live in the other side of the world. My experience have been of this 24-hour, very challenging, and I think that I have attended one of the last Thinkathon in presence, not online, and I'm very grateful for that because speaking to other mates in person have been really deep, and I don't know if the online version will be the same. Anyway, we have focused on something that was on the same theme of what Enessa have just said, but we have focused more on the loopholes that infrastructure of social media still have in making people get in contact one to another. I was in another kind of team. Usually I always, when I attend this kind of event, I always get into the policy recommendation teams. But this time I wanted to try something different, to challenge myself. And so I went into the light and camera team, whose goal was to produce a video. I found that for speaking about social media was useful to use the same kind of media that we were speaking about to communicate our outcome. So our aim was to find out, also in a very ironic way, some of the thousands of problems that we have while connecting to other people through social media and through places where we can be also anonymous and where we don't have always to show our face or our real identities. We have been talking about a lot of different themes, like one that I remember the most and I thought that was one of the most original and intense was the one about having a job meeting online and how this was different from having it in person, especially if I am applying for a job and I'm doing it through a social media like LinkedIn, and how this is different from going to a place and speaking directly to a people. These and a lot of other themes linked to our social media interaction and time that this week we spent on have been developed in a short script that we have wrote and then act. And then we have shooted this video that have been blended with other video produced in different locations in Canada and all through the Europe and in different times. And then we put all together and we have a final video outcome that I recommend all of you to look at because it's not only very funny because we are acting, we are not actors, so it's really fun to see, but it's also a way that it's near to how we communicate in social media, but to speak about social media. So it's like a meta video. And I think that at the end of the day, the outcome was very powerful and could be a communicative tool to be shared on social media too.
Well, amazing, Marta, and I need to see this video. So if you have the link to it that you can share with everyone, I'd love for you to drop it into the chat and then we could all watch it thereafter. It's really cool that you took a different approach and you leveraged social media to create that video. That's really awesome. Thanks for sharing that experience. I'm just getting a bit of feedback, so I'll get, once everyone stops talking, just mute your microphone. So Enessa, just coming back to you really quickly, what concrete policy recommendations, you identified some of the challenges with digital inclusion. What are some of the concrete policy recommendations that stand out that our parliamentary panelists can respond to? So what are some of the key ideas you came up with?
Our teammates were pretty excited, anticipating the presentation of our policy to some of our panelists today and policymakers. So I'm really excited to present this to you. The beauty of working as a team is to bring all of our policy ideas together and then vote on them as a team and to refine the policies that we've created. And the one that we voted on specifically during the in-person Thinkathon is called the Empathy Act. Don't we all need a little bit of empathy? That's something that might be a little bit more common in our face-to-face interactions. However, online, somehow that changes. Sometimes as a result of hiding behind the screen, or perhaps simply because of how fast-paced technology is moving, we tend to overlook maybe our interactions that take place online and the effect that it can have on people. So what is this act? I'm going to read the act to you. It's an act that purposely reminds people to take into account intersectionality through a GBA+ lens and reflect on whether the content they are about to post is offensive to certain marginalized groups. What is the benefit of having a reminder? Is sometimes we don't take a moment to pause and think of what we're about to say. So whether it's a platform like Facebook, where there's a blurb that shows up on your screen before you're about to make a comment, whether it's on a discussion thread, or whether it's a personal message that you're sending to maybe somebody on Facebook Marketplace. This post is going to allow us to read it. And as we click accept, it allows us to have that accountability. We already have accountability anyways, but sometimes it's good to have that extra reminder to help us to be good online citizens. So why are we doing this? It makes users reflect before posting their content. Anonymity on social media gives individuals the power to post haphazardly without reflecting on the possible repercussions of the content that they are posting. It could help to mitigate cancel culture before it happens. Moreover, it emphasizes a human approach on social media. How would this take place? Like I mentioned, it could be in the form of a sticker or banner that pops up before you post something, such as tweet, share, or Instagram.
Very good. Well, the Empathy app and act can be integrated into policies, into technology, into platforms, into everything. It's a fully horizontal and vertically integratable solution. So congratulations to you and your team for that. I can't wait to hear some of the impressions on that policy recommendation that goes beyond policy. And that's really exciting. Congratulations to you. Marta, I know you said that you didn't make any policy recommendations per se, but what's the idea that you wanted to present to our parliamentary experts and leaders today?
Well, thanks, Victoria. I would like to give a voice to the winning recommendation from the policy recommendation team in Milan during the Thinkathon that I have attended. I think that it's a very interesting recommendation because it speaks about how the digital devices can strengthen the bond between local governments and citizens. Basically, the idea is to solve the problem of the fact that people that live in a place know very well what the problem that they face daily are. And this is not obviously sure also for the people that need to govern them. So people that make policies may not know everything about how things are going. So we thought that a good idea could be to make citizens have an active role in policy making instead of a passive one, so that we can make policies that are more inclusive, as the MPs was saying before, and also to make them trust a lot more institution because they feel as a part of it. This we thought that could be made through two key main points. The first of all is that the government needs to focus an amount of money, a certain amount that is called participatory budget, that is a budget that he gives to a group of people, of citizens, that propose a project for making something better in their life through our policies. And then there is a race between all the projects that are proposed from different group of citizens, and the one that wins is the one that gave the money, but all the others can also comment and make more inclusive the project that won through a digital platform where everybody can speak and say his opinion.
Very good. So definitely digital democratic participation, growing trust in our institutions. Trust is good. We need more trust in our public institutions, and this would do that. So wow, congratulations. And these just represent two of the many ideas that were presented and created as part of the big Thinkathon. That's incredible. Thank you so much. So with that, let's dive right in. I am delighted to introduce our two esteemed panelists. First, we have Manuel Höferlin coming to us as a member of parliament from Germany and one of the key leaders of the official opposition, ready to discuss how we can implement all of these things and certainly champion it within Europe and Germany. And then we also have joining us Cid Cabilan. Cid, did I get that right?
You said it right, Dylan.
Nice,
Yep.
awesome. Who's leading digital governance here in Canada with Fergus. So amazing, amazing. Now I will note that Mr. Höferlin does need to depart in about 15 minutes. So Cid, I might favor Mr. Höferlin's remarks a little bit, but then we can continue the discussion after his departure because he also has commitments for his duties to safeguard democracy and all of those wonderful things. So let's get started. Before we dive into the concrete recommendations that we heard here today, let's take a step back. So we're governing right now in the context of a global pandemic. We have a global free trade agreement, CETA, that's opening up opportunities between Canada and across Europe. Canada and Germany have such a dear and deep friendship, and that's a relationship that Canadians hold to our hearts, and I know Germans do as well. So, you know, on a day-to-day basis, let's get really practical here. How much does parliamentary committee and work actually consider European and Canadian relationships? Because like, we know we're small, you know, we're a big country, but we know we're pretty small. So, you know, like how practical is it and at what priority is it for this CETA or this European Canadian relationship to come up in day-to-day parliamentary discussions? So we'll start with a big welcome to Mr. Höferlin. Welcome to the panel.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. Yeah, well, let's say behind the everyday life and business and politics, we have a lot of things to do. So sorry for my leaving earlier. It's necessary that I join another conference because next year we have votes and it's part of the discussion in our party this evening. So I have to leave a little bit earlier. Sorry for that. But in the parliament in the German Bundestag, we have a lot of things to talk, but of course we are talking about also about things to Canada. There's a friendship between Germany, Europe, and Canada, and as maybe you know, I'm in the German parliament. That we have a Deutsch-Kanadier, a German-Canadian parliamentary group. With a group of politicians from Germany with special focus and a deep relation to Canada. I'm happy to be the deputy chairman of this group and to help to organizing some exchanges and of experiences and ideas between German and Canadian parliament. It's very important for me that parliamentarians from different countries talk together, maybe in these times often via video conferencing. So it's nice. Last actions of this parliamentary group in September, we had a meeting in the Canadian embassy in Berlin with Ambassador Stéphane Dion and Senator Peter Böhm. He was via video conferencing with us. And as you know, Peter Böhm is the new chairman of the Canadian-German Interparliamentarian Group in Canada. And so we just agreed that we have to organize some meetings between these two groups. And in about 2 weeks, I think at the 18th of November, we have a big video conferencing between the German-Canadian group in the German Parliament and the Canadian-German Interparliamentary group of the Canadian Parliament. So I'm excited and looking forward to this. And so we can exchange. And you just as said, CETA is a very important thing. In my party, in the Free Democratic Party, we just talked a lot of things about CETA, and I would like to look forward to have a CETA agreement between Europe and Canada, of course.
That's very good. Well, thank you so much for those opening remarks. And it's great to hear that Canada is so close to your heart. For all of the viewers out there, we were speaking beforehand about Manuel's recent trip to the Canadian Shield from Toronto all the way to Quebec City. And it's a beautiful time of year in October. So we were reminiscing about that. So very good. So Cid, have you ever been to Germany? And how often does Canada-German, Canada-European relations come up in, you know, discussing digital governance and our plans here in Canada?
Hi, I just want to introduce myself first. Yes, my name is Cid. I am the Parliamentary Affairs Advisor to the Minister of Digital Government. We very happy to be here. In regards to that question, I mean, we have a dedicated minister, Minister François-Philippe Champagne, who is in charge and solely charge of bringing the torch for Canada and making sure that multilateral relations across countries, including Germany, is for sure taken into consideration. And you know, Canada and Germany has a long-standing relationship, and this is something that, you know, as Manuel has pointed out, CETA is one of them. And at the same time, there's a couple of common goals and shared visions that Canada has, Germany has been focusing on. You know, both countries are part of G7 and G20, which, you know, has happened in Canada and Charlevoix. Something that is tangible or tangential, sorry, with digital government is the Open Government Partnership. And that is something actually that, you know, touches on to the topic that you guys are discussing today. And that is, you know, how do we make sure that, you know, the data and the accessibility of government operations is within at hands to citizens, and that is actually at the heart of democracy, right? The strength of our democracy lies on how open and transparent government is, and I believe that this is something that Canada and Germany definitely focus on throughout the years. I might say that I'm not a foreign affairs expert, but I do want to focus on, though, that there is a committee that focuses on foreign affairs, and every day they set their priorities, they set their committees, and what they do is that, you know, they deal with the pressing issues of the day, and that is the global COVID-19 pandemic. And, you know, as we thread in, you know, as we go on towards this discussion, you know, Parliamentary Secretary Greg Fergus has touched on something that's very important, and I know that this is something that the Bundestag in Germany and here in Canadian Parliament is talking about is, you know, putting people first in the heart of everything we do.
Yeah, and that's so important. And if we look at the two policy recommendations that we heard today, it really is about putting people first. And it's about participatory government, getting citizens involved, building trust, but also building public accountability about what they post online, and making sure that everyone's accountable for how we live and steward and be how we're citizens in the digital environment. So kind of turning the page there, I would love your thoughts on the two recommendations we heard. They're multi-jurisdictional issues. I mean, they actually raise a lot of the same issues that we're seeing with COVID-19 contact tracing apps. So not to complicate it much more, but if you're looking at participatory governance, or if you're looking at empathy acts or empathy app integration, it does require many different levels of government working together: data exchange, digital solution, discussions of inclusivity in the digital economy. So what would be the feasibility, or what is your reaction to, you know, the empathy app, as well as kind of the participatory budget and digital infrastructure that's been proposed today? We'll start with Manuel.
Yeah, thank you. I just take two things. This Empathy Act, I think it's an interesting thing, because it's an old thing in the internet. It's called netiquette, you know, and we have it for 30 years, but unfortunately nobody thinks about in this quick life in the internet. You just get messages and you get things in the timeline, and you just want to react fast, because only these ones who react fast to some messages or to some events will be catched by the algorithm of Facebook or some other engines, you know. And so you have to react fast, and that's one thing we as politicians do often. We often react fast if we get messages on news, and after some time I think, well, you should have took your time and think a little bit about what you said. And I usually do this now, because I think it's not the best way just to be the first every time. And that's a problem everybody has. So I think this is a major idea to maybe to enforce people to be more, well, to be more reflective in what they say in the internet. And often you say things and you don't think about what these words can do outside your screen or your app. And on the other side, side of the line, there are humans. So if you say something, everybody at the other end just react to it again. So I think this is a good thing, but we need to. It's not only a thing for politics and for regulation. It's also a thing for the society. We have to talk about these things more. Not everything. I think you can regulate a lot of things, but you cannot regulate people to be nice or to be every time political correct in their heads and thinking. You know, you just can regulate thinking, and so you have to have more discussion in society. You have politicians not only make laws; they have only a possibility to talk about things in the society. And I think that's come back to the people first sense from Greg. I think that's what we can do in politics. We can think about people first and not only do simple regulations about everything.
Absolutely. And Cid, I'm going to come back to you, just cognizant of Mr. Höferlin's time, if you don't mind. So I know, again, time is short. COVID-19, as a parliamentary leader, what have been some of your biggest learnings? I mean, we have leaders on the line, young people who might be running in upcoming elections. You know, you already spoke to, you know, some of the behaviors we're exhibiting in terms of, you know, tweeting and reacting and not taking the time. So, you know, what do you feel has been your biggest learning since moving digital in terms of parliamentary affairs, serving your constituents in a digital environment, and just leadership in general? What has been your big aha when it comes to governing in this context?
Well, the biggest aha was unfortunately that we are not digital enough. I'm a digital guy for years. I had an own IT company, but it's also like Greg told in the Canadian parliament. We lose a lot of facts. We lose a lot of presence in votings, etc. So we have to be more digital to be, but it's not only to use or to do the same things with digital tools, but it's a question of digital transformation. And I think that's the big chance we have, that we can transform things in a new way and have benefits from this. And I must say, in Germany, well, as you said, Victoria, I'm part of the opposition, but I'm also a chairman of the digital community. So I can say we are too slow in digital transformation in politics. We always talk about transformation in society and in economy, but we are doing not enough to digital transform politics. And I think it's important in Germany to have a Ministry of Digitalization, or better, Ministry of Digital Transformation, so that we can stick together all the things and we must not have several paths. They are parallel, and at the end, the government finds out, hey, we have two solutions for one problem. from two ministries, and that's a part of the problem in Germany. So that's, I think the society is more digital than political and governments, and I must say in Germany, and we have to speed up and transform politics so that we can get on the same line as the rest.
I think the world is feeling all of your remarks right now. We're getting a number of questions coming in. I know your time is short. We'll send through
Sorry for that.
Yeah, we'll send through some questions to you, should you be able to answer them afterwards.
Of
but
course.
I guess I'll just close off and bid you adieu with a final note. Like, what would be your big moonshot digital policy? Like, if you had participated in this Thinkathon, like, would it be that that fulsome commitment to digital transformation, or what would be your big idea?
Yeah, I think we have to organize digital transformation all over the world better together. And I think one of the points is the use of data. I find out last year when I was in Canada, we as Germans and as Europeans, we have more in common with Canada as I thought before, because we have the same kind of thinking about personality and freedom. And I must say, often in Germany, when we talk about North America, we only think about the US and forget that it's Canada, which is more closer to our thinking, our being, and thinking about a lot of things in digital rights for the people. So I think the data and non-personal data organization, this is a very important thing. Economy about that data, but that the people has their data in their hand, they can use it, and I think that's one of the main issues we can organize in the digitalization.
That's awesome. So Mr. Höferlin, on behalf of the YTL, and the entire group here, the Goethe-Institut, thank you so much for joining us and for bringing that global perspective. And thank you for your service to your country and to our friendship. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye. Very good. So Cid, you're on the hot seat, my friend.
No, I am in the hot seat. Gee.
Very good. Okay, so let's get down to business. Let's focus on some of this. So what's your reaction to the Apathy app? What's your reaction to digital participatory governance and the ideas you heard here today?
Enessa, Marta, that's exactly what Canadian government is doing. And that's putting digital at the heart of everything we do, right? Putting citizens' needs and making sure that we are responsive and resilient to the evolving circumstances in Canada. So for the Empathy Act, this is actually, if you might know, and I kind of brought this up before the conversation, is that it's actually the theme of our digital nations that we're celebrating today, this week. And so it is a group of gathering of digital governments and looking for areas of collaboration and sharing common practices. And the theme of this digital nations this year, and that Canada is hosting, is responsive and resilience services. Perfect. And this is the Empathy Act is talking about. You mentioned some very good things about GBA Plus Lens. This is something that the government implemented last year, and looking into not just the preface of policy, but also looking into disaggregated data, looking into people's colors of people's race, looking into age, social determinants as to how we inform better policymaking in Canada's decision making. In terms of participatory budget and kind of putting that in, I'm not a fiscal expert here, but
we can ask our leaders for a budget to engage citizens. Come on now, no?
That is true, right? And this is what Greg is talking about, that we want to design government services. We want to think about design with edges. And that is about, I like that. Yeah, and that is just about, not just looking about factual things that we look into, but also helping those that you need the most. And that's something that our government keeps saying. We are helping those Canadians, the middle-class Canadians, and helping those who need it the most. Because echoing some members of parliament that have spoken about this, the cost of inaction is more than doing too much. And if we don't act on the, as you know, the COVID pandemic that's before us, the economy would have been rolling to pieces if government didn't help the citizens. And that's why we implemented the CERB. For students, we implemented the Canada Emergent Student Benefit. And within those benefits, bring in digital government here. Digital was the heart there, just because we cannot deliver those benefits fast if we didn't think digital, right? If you think about old ways to send texts or old ways to apply, everyone has to apply by paper. And I believe that the vision that Greg somewhat touched, and I hope that everyone's aware about the vision that the Minister of Digital Government wants, is that, so 5 more things, is that there's no more papers, there's no more confusion about government benefits and services, no more sit on hold in call centers, no more complicated logins, and that no more having to file your taxes online. And anyway, I'm just going to wrap it up. I think that our youth leaders are right on the right track of what they're proposing, and I hope that those voices, and for sure, I know there's an opportunity for you guys to pitch that into Parliament.
That's awesome, Cid. And I find, and this is to Manuel's point earlier, that a lot of the digital transformation discussion, like this is just with my own hat on, like we had those discussions 10 years ago, and government's just getting into it now. So, so it's kind of what's next. And I think that discussion, and I'm sure you guys are working on it, so would love to hear your thoughts about this, and then bringing that to the COVID situation and what you've learned through COVID in terms of leadership and governance, but just who owns data, who accesses the data. I mean, if I look at that empathy app that Enessa and her team proposed, what's truly the feasibility of getting something like this going, so that when maybe a parliamentary presidential leader is about to send a tweet, it's not going to the masses, and hurting a lot of people in the process, intentionally or unintentionally. So like, it's a pretty loaded question, but I mean, we're talking about like now ideas that we need for tomorrow, while government catches up and does the digital transformation that we always knew we needed, but now we really, really need, So, what has COVID taught you about all of this? And do you feel like it's really energized the minister in even a higher level?
I mean, everything is possible. Exactly what also the pandemic taught us, right? There are many health inequities and outcomes that the COVID pandemic has highlighted, that vulnerable populations have been adversely affected. But at the same time, from a digital government perspective, we actually took this as an opportunity and used that to accelerate digital government transformation. Just to give you an example on how we did that, is that when shutdown happened, about more than 400,000 public servants have to work from home. And that is something that the government was not ready. But overnight, over the past within just few weeks, Shared Services Canada, that is under the Minister of Digital Government's portfolio, was able to provide those services, maybe not perfect, but we were able to react quickly within weeks. And in the series of the events, as you know, we also implemented, as government as a whole, CERB, wage subsidy, and student benefit, and that is because digital was at the back end. If we don't think about service delivery without digital, I think it is impossible to deliver those secure, reliable, easy-to-use services to Canadians. And I think, as the Prime Minister always said, everything is always possible, real change is always possible. And I think when we think about accelerating digital government transformation, we also have to think as to the barriers and challenges that we've had from the past governments. And how do we learn from those barriers and challenges and bring that forward to the present time? We have problems about IT infrastructure, we have problems about providing, like, I'm not even kidding, we have data centers in the cloud that are burning. And that actually costs a lot in terms of services and lags in applications. But if we can actually invest more on that, and that is actually one of the heart, and that is one thing that we can do in digital government transformation. And people has a role to do it. Go to your members of parliament, talk about how digital is important in policymaking process, and think about how we can do better if we think if we think through the use of the tools and collaboration tools that we have today.
Well, and that's exactly right. You don't have to that's the thing about leadership. You don't have to wait for someone to invite you to the table. You go to your local member of parliament and you get active, talking about the importance of digital transformation and issues. Those are some great examples. One of the questions here, and we'll finish off here if that's okay, Cid, as we wrap up to our time. It's been such a great discussion, and thank you for your valuable contributions. This is coming from Julia. And again, it just kind of dovetails on what you said, is how can we make sure that young people are involved in the policymaking process? And I know, we have a Minister for Youth. We have here in Canada, we have a youth council. What are a few other best practices, and then maybe just a few closing remarks from you?
Maybe I'll tell my story.
Because we have about 1 minute.
Yeah. Be active in the democratic process. Be loud. As what we this is what we want to encourage people. This is a democratic process. We want your voice out loud, be in social media, but obviously, as pointed out by youth leaders, be more restrained as to how we say it, and be more this process. We're more restrained as to how it can proceed to others, and talk to your members of parliament. They are elected to hear your concerns, and I hope that our youth leaders can be the ambassadors of their own ridings or their own locations, and make sure that you are part of this strong democratic process in Canada.
And globally. And I think that's Enessa and Marta, congratulations on what you've achieved, and to all of the YT, all of the leaders out there. Thank you so much for stepping up and really thinking critically about how you create global governance solutions. It's very incredible. Cid, so inspiring. Thank you as a young, amazing Canadian, leading the way in digital transformation in Canada. Just amazing stuff. We're really proud of you. And I'd love to pass it to Antoine just for some closing remarks, and to share with us what's coming up next and what you should keep your eyes out for.
Yes, thank you, Victoria. Thank you, everyone. So just for you to know, so the project continues, right? There's an online challenge that continues over the fall. So I've just put the link in the chat box for everyone. So if you're interested, feel free to sign up to the challenge, to share with your friends, your colleagues. So it's open to any young adults, age 18 to 30, or connect with us if you want to learn more. So that goes on still until the end of the year. So I'll pass it on to you, Victoria, for the last final words. But thank you again, everyone, for joining.
Well, it's awesome. And I'm gutted that I don't qualify for under 30. Oh my goodness. I wish I could join you guys. Just congratulations, everybody. In this really difficult time, it's so important that we look beyond borders to create meaningful digital solutions, to include more people in the digital economy, to kind of raise all ships. And that's what's most important. It's been an honor to be part of this conversation today. Marta and Enessa, you are so inspiring. Cid, you are incredible, just loving what you're doing and where your career is going to go. Mr. Fergus and Mr. Hoeferlin, amazing. And Antoine and Robin, thank you for your leadership. Everybody on the call today, what a great way to spend our evenings and afternoons, eh? Okay, awesome. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you at the next event. Bye-bye.